genesis? Where did it start? I mean, we can go a lot of places. We can go where did it start as far as me getting into comics, me wanting to write comics. But in terms of what this is right now, where did it start?
Okay, so we finally at First Brigade. What, where, how? What is First Brigade? It's a team book of superpowered service people. They put service before self. So that was the 30-second version of what First Brigade is. But for me, the creator, it's so much more. It's a puzzle of a lot of things that I'm into, from inspirations to childhood loves. Firstly among them, obviously, being comic books. So there I was, figuring, okay, I'm working on this Blossom Bushido thing. At the time, it was still going pretty well. Like I said, the final shoe hadn't dropped. We were still like on the road of getting that thing done at the time with that publisher. I was still simultaneously working for various websites, doing different things. And then I'm like, okay, I got a lot going on, at least creatively, work-wise. But, I think I can fit in and, like, at least, kicking the can down the road as far as creating a team book. And from that start, I initially came up with the idea that it was going to be kind of a superhero team book.
It was something I grew up reading. I've read and have probably still continue to this day dabble in a lot of team books. Mostly Marvel, some DC, a lot of Marvel. So you can kind of imagine the team books I was into growing up as a kid. I mean, my age of comics, I was a huge X-Men fan. So like X-Men, Uncanny X-Men were published at the time I was growing up. X Factor, which I dabbled in a little bit, Peter David. I'll get into that guy later. X-Force was probably one of my favorite, and if not to this day, even looking back at it now, even rereading some of those issues, it's probably one of my favorite comics, like all time. Volume 1. X-Force Volume 1. I like some of the later X-Forces, but Volume 1 that's where also later got into Avengers, Fantastic Four, jump over to the DC side. I was actually really a big fan of the Titans, Teen Titans, those variations. Justice League, it really depended on who wrote the books. And I had to actually thank a few friends later in life that really got me into reading some really good DC comics and team storylines. One of my friends from college and one of my childhood friends. But I think I jumped off the rails a little bit. So even if you think I think outside of the realm of comic books, I've always been a fan of just ensemble cast. Like growing up, there was G.I. Joe, Transformers, and things of that nature. I mean, Voltron. I mean, come on. Like, still at this stage, I'm not seriously thinking, oh, I'm gonna publish this, but it's just like creatively, I'm feeling like this is what needs to come out. So it didn't take much time. Part of it came from a conversation, honestly, that I had with my friend Frank. Transitioning into becoming a firefighter at the time. So I started reading about like firefighters and first responders too. Subsequently, that thing started to kind of weave itself together, and I ran across the line. I think it involves paramedics, and it could extend to fighters as well. And it was the phrase was service before self. Like I said, had the idea service before self, like kind of superpowered firefighters, paramedic type of deal. First responders is probably the best phrase I can use and term I can use. It encompasses both. And so with that being said, and like I said, I have been reading and absorbed this Peter David book. Writing for comics with Peter David. Peter David, for those who aren't aware, it's probably one of my favorite comic book writers. Wasn't the first comic book writer I ran across, but he's known for a magnificent run on Incredible Hulk. He also did a really stellar job on, I believe it was Volume 2 of X Factor. It's the X Factor involving Scott Summers, where they were, they worked with the federal government.
He did a couple of various things within Marvel. One of my favorite personal runs of his is a run he had on Captain Marvel. Not the current Captain Marvel that's like currently on the big screen and running around in Marvel Comics. But no, I'm referring to the first Captain Marvel's son, Jean Vale. But Peter David had a magnificent, outstanding. It was like one of my favorite runs on the comic. It's just psychological. It's just like it's so personal, like personal in terms of the characters in the arcs, I should say. Multiple characters in that book, but I went back to that book at that time because I had a hook. Superhero firefighters, but superhero firefighters. But it needed more than a hook. It needed characters, and that's where this book came in handy. I'm pretty good. I'd say I'm okay with creating characters, coming up with characters, developing characters. But there's a particular chapter in this book that was really helpful for me developing the characters that wound up in First Brigade. And that's more so, there's a section in the book where he talks about character dynamics. He talks about how characters relate with one another based on personality and personality types. And the example he used in the book was that of the Fantastic Four, and talking about how certain combinations of personalities either mix together or they're like oil and water, and how that tension between the characters could add tension to your story. So that was, and the creation of First Brigade, that was kind of like my first rule in terms of character creation. It was kind of more so thinking, okay, how do these characters' personalities either work with each other or oppose one another? It's like creating tension. So that was literally the start of me kind of sitting down and really having a framework to figure out these characters that I want to include in this story. We'll come back next time and I'll kind of dive into just how the First Brigade team members became the First Brigade team members.